More dangerous test bowler currently, Shaheen Afridi or Paddy Cummins?
Ooh.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Change of Pace podcasts. It's been a while since we've done one of these, but with the historic tour of Australia coming up in just a week's time, we thought it'd be good to regroup and then talk about something that we haven't seen in Pakistan for the last 24 years. I'm Ahmed, I'm joined by AZ Khwaja, and we'll be telling you about our special guest in just a moment's time. To give you a little bit of context of what's happening in Pakistan cricket at the moment, today is the PSL final. Lahore are facing off against Multan Sultans in what should be a historic match. It will either be the first championship for the Qalandars or Multan will be the first team to win back-to-back. And at the very same time, Australia, as we mentioned, have arrived on the Pakistani shores for the first time in 24 years. They're all set for what should be, again, a very historic tour. And given the mammoth nature of this tour, we figured it would only be right for us to speak to someone that could shed insight and give us information, not just about Australian cricket now, but also the Aussie mindset. We are speaking to someone that is a fast bowling legend, someone that's synonymous with that great team of the late 90s and early 2000s, a man that has the incredible feat of having scored a double century as a night watchman. And if you haven't figured it out by now, we're speaking to Mr. Jason Dizzy Gillespie. Jason, thank you so much for being here. A warm welcome to Change of Pace. How are you doing?
Oh, thanks for having me on Change of Pace. I'm looking forward to the chat. And lovely intro. Thank you very much.
Thank you for being here. AZ, I think we've thought about all of the questions and things we wanted to ask. There were just so many things that were on our mind, but we thought we'd narrow things down and just, start off with a little bit of history, understand your personal experience of playing against Pakistan. So if you could just give us a little bit of background about how it felt, what were the challenges, how did you guys perceive that team of Pakistan? Because obviously back then it was a completely different side than what it is now.
Yeah, look, but my memories of playing Pakistan are fantastic. Challenging is probably a big word. You always felt you're in the game against Pakistan, but at the same time, you always felt that if you just took your foot off the gas, if you just took it a bit easy, they could just run rings around you and get on top of you very quickly. Because I suppose from a bowler's perspective, the Pakistan batsmen are known as stroke players, aren't they? They've always been very positive and look to score mentality. And you always felt if you were really disciplined with your line and length, you could put the batsman under pressure a bit. But you just felt if you just didn't quite get it right or you just eased back, you felt that the Pakistan batsman could really capitalise. And before you know it, a batter that's just walked in is all of a sudden 40 or 50 not out and he's away. And so that was always the big challenge. And, I suppose from the times I batted, I think the few times I batted against Pakistan, I know I scored some runs at the MCG once, which was nice, but my memories of facing Shoaib Akhtar weren't overly pleasant. I think I went through a period of between some tests and one days in a row, and I didn't face many balls. And he basically, if he pitched the ball up on my stumps, I was out because he just bowled too fast for me. He'd hit me on the foot or on the pad and or knock my stumps over because he was just simply too quick. And but yeah, it was a great challenge playing Pakistan. You always knew you're in for a really tough contest. And as I said, they've always been a very, I suppose the term I use is very hot and cold side. They're either the batsmen are running hot or they can lose wickets in clumps. Bowlers can either be absolutely bang on or they give you a lot to hit. So very up and down, inconsistent side, but at times, certainly when I played, but when Pakistan were on, well, look out. They were a very, very dangerous team.
I think that's a general consensus about Pakistan cricket throughout history, just on and off. And then when they had those days, they'd have, the kind of days that anyone, couldn't beat them on. Any one name that comes to mind when you think about, a tough batsman that you had to bowl to from Pakistan?
Oh, wow. There was a few. Inzamam was a wonderful player, wasn't he? The great Inzamam ul Haq, what a wonderful player he was. Uh, Yunus Khan. I was fortunate enough to play with Yunus Khan. He played a little bit for South Australia. I also played with him at Yorkshire, so I got to know Yunus quite well. What a lovely man he is, and his record just speaks for itself. Playing in all conditions, I think that's something that a lot of players from the subcontinent, from Pakistan, India, Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, sometimes get labelled as specialists in that region in those conditions. But I think someone like Yunus Khan showed he could score runs in all conditions against all types of bowling. And, I think he was a pretty special player. And you could probably put Inzamam in that category as well. They're probably the two main guys that really stick out for me. Didn't particularly enjoy bowling to them. They were a good challenge, but certainly, wonderful players. I spent a little bit of time. I met outside of playing Test cricket and international cricket. I met Inzamam. I went on in 2007. I actually got picked from when I was playing county cricket for Yorkshire. I got picked to go on an Aussie A tour to Pakistan, and the player that replaced me at Yorkshire as overseas pro was Inzamam. So he came and played a couple of games for Yorkshire while I was with Australia A in Pakistan. Now that was right at the end of my career. So it's a quirky little tale there.
No, that's actually very interesting. And you're talking about Pakistan and having played them, and you mentioned the on and off kind of situation that the Pakistanis had. When it came to touring Australia, we haven't had much success. Do you think there's a particular reason for why the struggles have really been there for Pakistan cricket in Australia?
Look, I don't think Australia's on their. I don't think Pakistan's on their own in struggling in Australia. I think a lot of teams do. It's a unique challenge. Australia play incredibly good cricket here in Australia, and there's not many teams over the last 20, 30 years that have actually come away from Australia with a Test series win. So it's a big challenge. So Pakistan aren't on their own, so to speak, in having challenges in performing in Australia. To play good cricket in Australia, you need to be consistent. And as I mentioned earlier, Pakistan probably fairly or unfairly get labelled inconsistent at times. And I think over a longer series, the teams that put in those hour by hour, session by session, day by day, they're the teams that 90% of the time come out on top. And Pakistan, for one reason or another, just haven't been able to quite string together. They can string a good hour, a good session together, maybe a good day of cricket, but over the course of a full game, they have in the past, and certainly in my experience, have struggled to have that real impact in Australia. We look at the squad that Pakistan have announced and Australia's squad for this tour. I think both squads are incredibly balanced for this tour. I think Pakistan will be completely and utterly lifted by the opportunity to play at home. I don't know. You guys might know better, but there are some Pakistan players that have played their whole Test career without playing a Test match in Pakistan, and that's one of the great shames of the 21st century cricket, I suppose. The last 20 years has been, we've seen some wonderful players who haven't been able to play in front of their home fans, and I think that's a real tragedy, really sad. But I think this tour is so exciting for so many reasons, and at the top of that list is the fact that Pakistan players can play in front of their home crowds, and home crowds can watch their heroes play, and I think that's so exciting.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the impact that we're already seeing within the PSL of having the home crowd, it just changes the dynamic altogether. You're absolutely right. Many of these guys have, entered international cricket without ever having played in Pakistan. Some of them played in the UAE. They had some opportunities now with South Africa coming in, and, that kind of opened up the gates. And I think we're at the cusp of that time where we also start to establish our home dominance. I think one of the things that Australia has been very successful with is the fact that even if they struggle away, at home, they're absolute giants. It's very difficult to beat them. I think very few teams, bar India, have really come in and given them a really difficult time. So I think that factor about, many teams now coming in and performing well enough obviously applies to Pakistan. And I think it'll be interesting to see how, Australia coming off the back of an Ashes win go into Pakistan with what looks like a very, very strong squad. But again, with the home conditions, with the advantage of the crowd, I'm not sure how that gets neutralized. Izzy, you were talking about this before in our personal chat about how Australian cricket's not just about the skill set, but also the mindset. So do you want to
Yeah.
maybe dig into that a little bit more?
Exactly. I wanted to tap into Jason's, memories. What is that? Because we've suffered at your hands a lot in 99, 2010, 2003. There's the list of scarred memories related to Australia and Pakistan are very, very long, like especially in like a boomer like me. He has a lot of bad memories playing you guys. So what is that intangible that you guys tap into when it's a big game, a big tournament, and you just guys manage to breeze through every single time?
Well, I think there's an element of it sounds really simple, but just not giving up, not releasing the tension, so to speak. Like I know certainly as bowlers, it's coming in and you have a game plan, and you just want to, as a bowler, you just want to implement that game plan as best you can, and it's just hanging in essentially for longer than your opposition, and that's the whole mindset. Like doesn't matter what the conditions are, how hot it is, how tired you are. All you have to do is hang in longer than the opposition. And generally as an Australian trait, that's something that's ingrained in us from a very early age. You hang in longer than the opposition. Who's going to blink first, so to speak? You just make sure that you are fit enough, strong enough, robust enough, mentally switched on enough to stay in the contest as long as possible. And as I said, get the opposition team individuals to blink first, make that mistake first, and be ready to capitalise on that mistake when it comes. It sounds very simplistic, but it's just you just think if you watch great battles in our sport, in all forms of the game, it's by and large, it's whoever's just hung in the longest and been as disciplined and as patient as they possibly can be, and then that's where you capitalise. So you think of some great bowling spells and batters getting through those tough times, and then you always hear the commentators talk about cashing in later. That's something that I think Australian players over the years have done very well. Identify when the opposition are maybe on top or leading the charge, and what you need to do is just accept that and absorb that tough time, and then make it up further down the track. And I think the very good teams, not just Australia, I think any very good teams tend to do that better. And I think that's going to be a real hallmark of this series in Pakistan. I think who is going to be able to just be disciplined, be patient, and not blink first. I certainly think Pakistan, home conditions, they're going to want to play well in front of their home crowds. They haven't done it much in the last little while, so at that opportunity to play in front of their home crowds, and conditions that are very very familiar to them, I think it certainly gives Pakistan an edge, I think.
Yeah, I think,
and especially the way the Aussies, like we've seen Marnus Labuschagne's videos, how hard he's working. We saw that overhead cam of Steve Smith working hard on some rough pitches. Those guys are super locked in for this series. This means a lot, clearly.
It certainly does, and you've seen. I mean, these guys are thinking about how they can have an impact in Pakistan against this very good Pakistan squad, and so they're trying to identify areas that maybe they need to just be really clear on how they're going to go about playing. We've seen Marnus's videos on social media. We've seen Steve Smith, how they're going to go about it. I know all the bowlers are preparing as well as they can. They know the fast bowlers, they know they're going to have to be very disciplined, very patient. Nathan Lyon will lead the spin brigade. Depends how many spinners. Do Australia play double spin, or do they just back their fast bowlers in? Traditionally, everyone talks about the subcontinent being spin friendly, but that may not necessarily be the case with Pakistan conditions. Maybe later in the tour, but the first test, I think certainly the seam bowlers will have an impact. And Australia have been quite successful playing just the one frontline spinner, haven't they? So I'm not sure their team will change too much, particularly that first test, but we'll have to see. And but it'll be interesting to see which way Pakistan go with the makeup, particularly their bowling lineup, because they've got some bowlers that are in pretty good form over the last 4 months.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one of the interesting things, like you mentioned, is that Pakistan versus India versus Sri Lanka versus Bangladesh are completely different, environments and setups. You're not going to go in with the same mindset, with the same attack. And I think one of the differences that we're seeing, at least in the PSL so far, is that between Karachi, between Lahore, and now going into Pindi, the pitches are going to be completely different too. We've seen some slower wickets coming out in Lahore during the PSL, spinners getting grip, but there also being a lot of reverse swing. I think Pindi suits fast bowlers a bit more as well. So I think the Aussies will have that in mind, and maybe, just the three frontliners with a single spinner might just do it. Interesting fact, though, is that for some of the players that are also coming in from the Australian side, this is their first chance to play in Pakistan, obviously. Is it also for them, one of those final frontiers? Is that why it's also so important?
Oh, I can assure you, this is going to be as close to the pinnacle of players' careers as it gets. Some guy, Australia haven't toured their full Test tour since the late '90s, since '98, I think. So that's a long time, isn't it? And so it's somewhere that another opportunity for an Australian team to make history, in essence. To win a Test series away from home. As we've talked about, winning Test series away from home is hard enough, but going to a place that Australia haven't been in so long makes it even more of a challenge. It's going into the unknown. That the only guys that have any experience are the guys that played a little bit of PSL in the last couple of years in Pakistan. So, some of the guys on tour were toddlers when Australia last toured Pakistan. So it's going to be absolutely fascinating, and I'm really excited for it. As I said, I'm really interested to see how the cricket's played. Is it going to be spin dominant? As you said, surfaces are getting a bit tighter, through PSL. But I think, obviously the Test matches will be fresh pitches, but Australia play Test series in Australia on drop-in wickets. So reverse swing doesn't become as prominent as it does on a big pitch square on dry surfaces and dry outfields. So their reverse swinging skills are going to come into it. And I think Australia have got some very good bowlers to take advantage of that. But as we've seen, Pakistan, Hassan Ali is, a big resurgence in his career the last year. He's one of the best components of reverse swing bowling going around. So he's going to pose an immense challenge for Australia. And then you've got Shaheen Afridi, who's been a genius with the new ball. So there's some big challenges for the Australian batters against particularly those two guys who've been very successful for Pakistan the last little while.
Yep, absolutely. And I think one of the other interesting things now is that we're also coming in with a brand new spin attack. We don't have Yasir Shah coming in to bowl. We're going to have Nauman Ali and Sajid, who performed really nicely in Bangladesh, but there is also that lack of experience there, and something that's very new to them is international cricket. They're only within their first 5 or 6 games, so it'll be interesting to see whether the Aussies really take them on, given the fact that these guys haven't really been at this level for a very long time.
Yeah, and that's a really good point. They haven't been at their level a lot. I suppose their skill set they bring in, and they're not huge turners of the ball, but what they do is mix up their pace well, and they're incredibly accurate. And if the surface provides them with any assistance, they are going to be a real handful, I think. But I think you're right. I think the Australians, they'll have a plan for the spinners, because what they'll want to do is, and what Australians, what they tend to do is look to target spinners, particularly finger spinners, because if they can target the finger spinners, we saw it in the Ashes. Admittedly, the surfaces weren't great for Leach, the left-arm spinner for England, but the Australians took him on. And what that does is it doesn't allow the captain to bowl the spinner and give his quicks a break. They'll have to bring the fast bowlers back. So it will be really interesting. My gut feel is that I reckon the Aussie batsmen will be certainly looking to take on the young spinners. and put them under the cosh, and get Pakistan to think differently, and maybe they have to go back to their fast bowlers again. So that'll be a really interesting little battle, I think.
So, Dizzy, whose performance or the matchup do you think is going to be fundamental for Australia and for Pakistan if they want to succeed in this series?
I think I'm really fascinated about the Australian fast bowlers against the Pakistan top four. I think they're highly talented. There's some good experience there. Got a young rookie opener. What's the young fella's name? Who's starting out? Yeah, so he's just starting out, but you've got some real experience, and then you've got Rizwan, who is coming in. He'll probably come in at 6, won't he? Wicketkeeper batter who's he's averaging over 40, nearly 40, 43, 44 from his test matches so far. So look, he's shown that he's a highly talented player early in his career. So I'm not sure if the Aussies would have seen much of him. Certainly not Test cricket. So I think the top 5, they'll be versus the Australian quicks. Nathan Lyon will be used early in more of a holding role, and then as the surface deteriorates, he'll come into his own a bit more, and the Australians will rotate their seamers around, and the 3 quicks plus possibly Cameron Green to bowl some important overs. There has been talk that if Australia play an extra spinner, that Cameron Green will be the 3rd seam option. Australia will be a little bit unsure about that, because they may not want Cameron Green bowling too many overs. So that could, open the door for someone like Mitchell Marsh, picking 2 out-and-out seamers, 2 all-rounders, and then the 2 spinners. So, yeah, lots of thoughts will go into the makeup of the final 11 for Australia if they think the surface is going to offer assistance for the spinners.
Jason, who do you see as the second spinner for the Aussies alongside Nathan Lyon?
Oh, the 2 options are Ashton Agar and Mitchell Swepson, isn't it? I think Agar adds depth to the batting. He's a good young batter. But I suspect they may go with the leg spinner. I think that he just brings a different, a different angle, different style of bowling. It could, but it depend. I think it will depend on what they think is going to take 20 wickets. Help them take 20 wickets. If they think a wrist spinner can really add value, they'll go the wrist spinner. But if they feel they need just a little bit more depth with their batting, they may use Ashton Agar. So yeah, a bit unsure, but I'm probably, if you put me on the spot, I'll probably say Swepson.
And I think one important element that we're still debating about is the Australian openers. We know David Warner's set, but is it going to be Usman Khawaja that opens, or will it be Marcus Harris that comes on and still challenges for the spot?
I think Usman Khawaja will open the batting. I think it's a wonderful story too. Obviously, was born in Pakistan, moved to Australia when he was 5 years old. I know Uzi is so excited about this tour. I know he's really, really looking forward to going back to Pakistan, and I think he'll get an unbelievably warm reception from all the Pakistan supporters. I think it's a wonderful story, and I know he's been I suppose a real sounding board for a lot of players and staff who've never been to Pakistan before, and they just want, I suppose, just a little bit of information about the place and a bit of feedback on Pakistan. So, but yeah, I think that's just a wonderful little side story about this tour, and it's great that Usman is on this trip.
Yeah, the heroes welcome.
Yeah, he's been in. His recent form has been absolutely incredible. But we know all about Usman and all these guys. What about the future of Australian cricket? Who is a young upcoming player you're involved with South Australia as well with the Redbacks? Who have you seen, do you think, can take the leap to the next level and play red ball cricket or white ball cricket for the Aussies?
Yeah, well, obviously, if we think it's who we are, who's going to play in Usman Khawaja and David Warner, they're both 35 years of age. So these guys aren't going to play on forever. So Australia will be identifying who their next I suppose, next top order players are going to be. And obviously Marcus Harris is on this tour, but I think that he's been identified as kind of a backup opener. He can bat anywhere in the top 4 or 5. Young lad who's playing for South Australia at the moment, the last few years, Henry Hunt, who's just been appointed captain in Travis Head and Alex Carey's absence on this tour. Henry Hunt, a young opening batsman here in South Australia, who played against England A in the for Australia A like this previous summer just gone. He's a young guy to probably keep an eye on. And I think he's a fine young player. There's a guy, I think he's on the tour. He's replaced Michael Nesser in Mark Steckety, a young fast bowler from Queensland. He's been doing really well in domestic cricket here in Australia for Queensland. Bowls with really good pace. There's obviously Stark, Hazelwood are over 30 years of age now. Paddy Cummins is about 28 now. Scott Boland is 32, 33. He's not going to be around forever, but Steckety, good young bowler. Brendan Doggett from South Australia. He's a good young fast bowler. He's was a reserve for this tour. So there's a few options going around, and obviously Swepson's on the tour along with Ashton Agar. We've seen Cameron Green who's played a little bit for Australia now. He's a fine young cricketer. He's going to be a superstar.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one name that we were both AZ Khwaja and I were watching at the BBL was Jason Sangha. He looked like the next big thing in terms of batting and the way that he was leading the field, and even with his bowling.
Yep.
Do you see him in the longer format as well?
Yeah, Jason Sangha is a fine young player, and there's no doubt that he'll start challenging. He's still applying his trade, I suppose, learning his trade with New South Wales in the longer form of the game. He had a bit of a breakout year for the Sydney Thunder in the BBL, which was fantastic. We love seeing young players coming through. I just don't like them scoring runs against the team I coach. The Adelaide Strikers, he batted beautifully and did really well. But no, it's very nice to see. And he plays for New South Wales in Sheffield Shield cricket. He's still sort of learning his craft and developing his game. But he's certainly, as you said, he's a very highly talented player. From an Australian perspective, we want to see these young lads coming through because it is very exciting. And guys like Steve Smith, David Warner, Usman Khawaja, they're not going to be around forever. So we need to start identifying these young players coming through and give them opportunities. Whether it be Australia A or potentially in the Australian Test side.
Speaking of your coaching resume and your career in that aspect, Jason, you've had a lot of success in county cricket. You were part of the resurgence of Yorkshire in the early 2010s. Then you coached Sussex as well. Now you're with South Australia. There's a big debate going on right now in England about the red ball cricket, about the county system. Do you think they're overreacting, or are there some flaws that they need to fix because they're getting smashed in the Ashes for the last decade and a half, and now they're really worried that what's going on, mate? We need to fix something.
Yeah, it's a really interesting discussion and it's a good debate. And having been involved in county cricket as a player and a coach for a number of years, I feel like I have a bit of an idea of how it's going there. There's certainly ways to improve things. I think for a start, scheduling is really key, and scheduling is really difficult. We know that. It's administrators, I think they do a wonderful job putting together schedules. It's really tough to please everyone, but you can't help but feel that 4-day cricket in the UK is probably not quite played at the right times at the moment. If they can play rather than bookending the seasons, early season or right at the back end of the season, if they can spread it out more evenly over the summer. I know it's really difficult to fit all that in, but if they can identify that, that's a potential opportunity. And then getting the surfaces right. I think playing on good quality cricket surfaces, the best players will rise to the top. And for me, that's really important. If you're playing on surfaces that aren't first class standard, it just brings the whole standard down. So for me, I think that's really important. playing at the right times of the year and playing on the best possible surfaces that that the curators can possibly put together. And, the curators have got a really tough job in the UK because there is so much cricket. They're squares, to prepare. They're constantly having to bring surfaces up and rejuvenate them and replenish them to play because there's so much cricket. I really feel for those guys. But that you could argue there's too much. Is there too much cricket? Maybe possibly. What the England and Wales Cricket Board have done in recent times have brought a fourth format of the game in the 100-ball competition. So there's another competition that is competing and competing for airtime, for space, for public interest. So when you have 4 competitions in one sport, it makes it a massive challenge to fit it all in and make sure all the facilities are best for everyone. It makes it really tough.
Do you feel like structurally it's fine? Like, is there any tweaks you would make in that regards, or it's just like you said about the scheduling and the pitches and the playing conditions?
Yeah, I think that by and large, I think it will come to a head at some point. When you have 4-day cricket, 50-over cricket, 2020 cricket, and 100-ball cricket, something will eventually give. And I don't know what the answer is there. But what we don't want to see is 4-day cricket fall by the wayside. That's for sure. It looks like the 100-ball competition is here to stay.
Well, Jason, you were rumored to have been asked. You were rumored to have been asked about the England head coaching role. Your name was right up there.
Yeah, that's happened every time that job's come up. Look, it's very flattering to have my name linked with any role, really. And very flattering. But mate, I've got a job to do at South Australia. I'm excited by that. I'm energised by that. I've been involved with the Adelaide Strikers for 7 big bashes now, and I love that job immensely. And so I'm fully committed to those roles. But as I said, it is flattering to I suppose be linked to roles around the world. But yeah, look, there's so many things, so many moving parts in English county cricket. As we've said, 4 formats of the game. I'm not sure how sustainable that is because it is just so much cricket, and I'm sure it will come to a head at some point.
And well, I have to ask you, since this whole JL scenario went down, you were pretty firm in saying I'm not entertaining the thought of coaching Australia at the moment. So you've dead batted that just like that. You're a double ton. So can we get some background on that? That was a pretty firm, and I felt when I read it, pretty harsh statement about Cricket Australia and the way they've operated. Or that's my view, anyways.
Yeah, and look, that's fine. I mean, everyone's entitled to interpret the way they were. I just felt that the situation could have been handled a lot better. I think, a coach was asked to go away and he was given feedback. He went away. He then adjusted and adapted his ways, and then he, I suppose, was told service is no longer required, which I don't have a problem with. That's fine. I think just the way I think it all transpired, I think is, and I think a lot of people agree that it just could have been handled better. I think, no one's entitled to jobs. I think if they didn't feel that he was the right man, just say it. That's cool. No worries. Everyone just moves on. That's fine. I know in roles that I've been in, if the hierarchy come to me and say, Jason, we don't think this is working, or we don't think you're the man to do this job, that's cool. No worries. We'll shake hands and we'll move on. And, I think it just felt that it was just Cricket Australia.
It was pretty undignified. Like, they didn't fire you. They said, okay, let's hang on for 6 months. You can play the World Cup. Come on, mate. Just let me go.
It just seemed to me that it was seen Cricket Australia looking to please everyone in that situation. And I understand that perspective. And, maybe I try to take a real open mind with it, because we all know there are a lot of things that go on behind the scenes that don't come out in the public domain. I get that. I understand that. But I think just from what we did see from reading reports and interviews and the like, it just felt that it possibly could have been handled a little bit better. That's all. And look, I am friends with JL, and I wished him well. I thought he did a very good job, for the Australian side, and contributed to Australia, winning a World Cup and winning the Ashes. If
well, Jason, let me ask you the clickbait question that'll go viral. Will JL coach England?
I don't know. The genuine answer is I don't know. I just know how proud and passionate JL is about Australia and Australian cricket. So, it'd be pretty unusual to see him wearing the England Lions. That's for sure. Look, I think if you go into coaching and you're a career coach, you look at any opportunity that you think you can help contribute to the team doing well. And if Justin feels that he can add some value and he can potentially help England play better cricket, then he may put his name up. I genuinely don't know whether he will. If he does, I'm sure he'd do a fine job. But I honestly can't tell you. I wouldn't have a clue whether he's interested or not. I mean, the fact is he's just finished up with Australia, so I think he's probably just looking to, take some time out and just spend some time with his family. He's been away from his family, been away from Perth for a long time. So I think just to take a moment, take a breath, and just spend some time with his family and reassess, where he wants to be and what he wants to do.
And I think it also makes sense now, given the whole, cricketing system within the pandemic and being away for so long with the bubbles and everything that's going on, definitely makes sense to disconnect. One thing that you mentioned there, obviously, is his success as a coach. He won the Ashes, he won the World Cup. For us as outsiders, it feels like the Australian media and maybe the cricket board doesn't value that T20 World Cup as much. Is that true? Or is that just a perception that we're getting?
I think that's a perception. I think Australia valued that really highly, because it was a trophy that Australia have never won. And so it was something that I know Cricket Australia, I know the players and the coaching staff were desperate to do well in that T20 World Cup. And for them to win that, it was a massive highlight. Make no bones about it. I can understand the perception that maybe that's the case. And, with all the stuff with that's come out with Justin and the coaching, and that's kind of glossed over everything a little bit. But no, make no mistake, that trophy was highly prized, and the players, I can assure you, were very, very happy to come away with that trophy.
Plus, to win it in the UAE, I mean, who would have thought Australia is going to win over there, of all places?
Yeah, look, Australia weren't seen as favourites, that's for sure. And their lead up to that World T20, people would look at that and go, well, they probably didn't have the ideal. They weren't on a winning, didn't win too many games in their series as leading up. But, I think they experimented a little bit and found the combination that they felt could challenge. And then some, the team played well, and some individuals really made an impact. The likes of Mitchell Marsh and Matthew Wade, made some really important contributions. Adam Zampa bowled beautifully in that series. Josh Hazlewood was outstanding. So it was I thought it was a real team effort. And, yes, they had a unusual lead in, I suppose, a bit up and down lead into that World Cup, but they did really well.
Yeah, and I think when you mentioned Matthew Wade, especially as a Pakistani cricket fan, we suffered at his hands in the semifinals. So for us, he's definitely public enemy number one at the moment. But you're absolutely right. The performances that they gave, and especially in crunch situations, that Aussie mindset, they just don't blink first. I think that really came through, and winning it in the UAE is very special for sure. We're just heading towards the final little session of this chat, Jason. We could probably go on all day, but we don't want to keep you for that long. Two questions that we still have in mind. In terms of, we talked about the key matchups and what's going to happen. How do you see, in terms of predictions, what do you see going forward in the series of Australia versus Pakistan tests, and I guess the ODIs, because the T20 is just one match?
Yeah, I suppose for the tests, I think the tests are going to go down to the wire. I think Pakistan and Australia will win one of the first two each. So I'm predicting it'll be 1-1 going into that third test, and then that third test, I think every team can be more consistent throughout the 5 days is going to come out on top. So I think it's going to be a really tight series. Pakistan deservedly will start as slight favourites, being I think the occasion's going to be brilliant, for world cricket, not just Pakistan cricket. I think world cricket. I'm really I'm delighted actually for the Pakistan players and Pakistan supporters, but it's been too long. It's been far too long between drinks for Test cricket to full Test series to be played. So I'm excited. The one day in T20s, well, Australia will feel they're in good nick in the T20s. They beat Sri Lanka 4-1 here recently. They've won the T20 World Cup, so they'll feel they're in a pretty good place. And the one days, look, the one days is probably a toss of the coin for mine. I think they're really up in the air. I can't pick a winner in the one days.
Honestly, I don't understand why we're all starting the series at Pindi, because it's going to favor the Aussies. They're 3 pacemen plus Cam Green. I think we're shooting ourselves in the foot here. We should have started in like a dust bowl in Multan or somewhere. I don't know, spin a web or something.
Well, we still don't know what the surface is going to be like in Rawalpindi. So actually has favoured the. But they right back. Who knows? We'll just have to wait and see.
Yep, and I think some interesting selection questions also coming in, because we are facing some injuries in the Pakistan squad. One of our main all-rounders, Fahim Ashraf, limped off in the final game at the PSL. So lots of moving parts there, and some interesting things to see as well. We're going to wrap up with a rapid fire round, Jason, just to give you some more difficult things and really put you on the spot. So we'll time it for 60 seconds. There's 8 questions. There's 2 options. You just have to pick one or the other. Okay. So the first question is, who is the more dangerous bowler, Wasim Akram or Waqar Younis?
Wasim. Sorry, did you get that? Wasim.
I think I had a connectivity issue.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, Wasim.
Wasim. Okay. Batsman to bat for your life, Ricky Ponting or Steve Smith?
Oh, God.
We don't want to make this easy.
I'm going to go, only because I played with him, I'm going to go Ponting. I didn't play with Steve Smith, but both wonderful players, but I'm just going to go Ponting.
Absolutely.
I have a feeling you have some affection for Smith there, though. You rate him.
I very much. I love watching Steve Smith play. I think he's a wonderful cricketer. But yeah, I think with 50-50 call, you go for someone that you had played a lot of cricket with, and he was my captain. Yeah, he wouldn't be happy if I didn't vote for him.
No, that's a very fair shout. More valuable to you personally? I know you didn't have a 10-wicket haul, but 10-wicket haul or double century?
I would have preferred a 10-wicket haul.
Okay, that's fair. More dangerous test bowler currently, Shaheen Afridi or Paddy Cummins?
Ooh. I'm only going to say Pat Cummins because he's been doing it for longer.
Fair enough. More important to Australian cricket at the moment, another World Cup or the World Test Championship?
World Test Championship.
Fair enough. More enjoyable delivery for you personally, the perfect middle to off outswinger or the perfect in-swinging Yorker?
Ooh. I could bowl the outswinger, so I wasn't very good at bowling Yorkers, so I'd say I would have loved to have nailed a big in-swinging Yorker.
Okay, fair enough. The batsman you enjoy watching more, Babar or Mohammad Rizwan?
Oh, I enjoy watching Bubba bat.
Okay. Last one. Who's going to finish with more test runs, Marnus or Steve Smith?
Ooh. Steve Smith.
Steve Smith. Okay, fair enough. I mean, Marnus is an absolute machine. He's the number one
He is, yeah.
best batsman in the world, and it's for a reason. I think also a big test for him stepping outside of Australia and really, testing himself. And I think he seems the most excited about this tour.
Oh, he's beyond excited. We've seen all his social media stuff. I watched an interview with him that he did here in Australia for one of our networks yesterday. He's jumping out of his skin. He's really looking forward to the challenge. He's so excited. He's never been to Pakistan before, so he's really excited and wants to contribute to Australia performing well. So I think everyone's excited about this tour, mate. There's a lot of interest here in Australia. It's a great place. I've been to Pakistan a couple of times. My first time I went with the Australian Cricket Academy back in the 90s. I really enjoyed that. Unfortunately, didn't get to play Test cricket or one days there, which was a shame. But yeah, a wonderful country. I remember it fondly.
Awesome. Any final words from you, AZ Khwaja, before we wrap up?
I think we're good. I think just one thing I did just muse about right now when he said Marnus, even his leg spin could be really useful, just like a session turner or something. He picks up a wicket here and there. I think, he's the guy to watch out for. And thank you so much, Dizzy, for your time. You've been absolutely smashing. Brilliant.
Yeah, absolutely.
No worries. Thanks for having me, guys. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, absolute pleasure. Thank you so much once again. And Change of Pace will be back for live commentary during the Test Series, ODIs, and T20s. We'll hope to catch you there, changepacelive.com. Thank you again for your time, Jason, and hopefully we'll get to speak to you
Pleasure.
soon. Thank you so much.
No worries. Thanks, guys. Good on you.